It's Council Day. This is the Coast City Editor, Kira McKenna, walking you through our live reporting via Instagram of what happened at Halifax Regional Council on March 9th, 2021. The meeting started at 11. We talked about illegal dumping, a bonus zoning agreement, new plans for a 13-story building behind the Victoria Hall historic property on Gottingen Street, and lots more. The first agenda item was the annual report from Halifax Water. Halifax Water has a plan to spend $230 million on infrastructure upgrades over the next few years. And Halifax Water in the report says it serves 105,000 customers and has been around for 76 years. So Halifax Water's General Manager, Kathy O'Toole, gave the presentation about key objectives and plans, and one thing that Halifax Water wants to do better, she said, is getting more people to know about stormwater credits. So here's a little bit of information about stormwater credits, and I'll put the link in the YouTube description for you to get more info about that. Another kind of maybe useful update from that was that Halifax Water is looking to set up a user-friendly online portal and switching one portion of its billing to monthly versus quarterly billing. That passed, and council took a break for lunch. So they were back from lunch with a presentation from the Halifax Partnership about the development of the 2022 to 2027 economic strategy plan. The presentation started with Corey Bell, who works during the days as the CEO of Lindsay Construction, and is also the chair of the ad hoc committee at Halifax Partnership, responsible for overseeing the development of Halifax's next 5-year growth plan. Interesting choice. So this is another one of those high-level reports that's hard to take in, but it does set big overarching goals for the municipality that other smaller, potentially more relevant in your life things then need to align with. So some info that came out of that report was that Halifax had its biggest recession in the last year due to COVID-19, with the GDP shrinking 3.5%. The last plan from 2017 to 2021 set out to see Halifax grow. This presentation at least mentions those who've been left behind by this big push for growth. So if you spin it to the side, it talks about like inclusive growth, so who's been left out as Halifax has grown, and attainable housing. How do we address rising rents and low vacancy rates? So it's a good thing to see that kind of in there. And so the last slide of the presentation featured some new branding for Halifax. Halifax, it's all here. So this motion is for at council today was for the plan to go off and be created. So it hasn't been created yet. It would come back at a couple different points during the whole process before it's set in stone. This kind of growth is good as per the presentation because it means jobs and more money flowing into HRM, and as a municipality who wants more taxpayers, so it has more tax revenue, this is a significant motivator. But we know that growth that's fast can have significant effects on things like housing and affordability and all kinds of other things. So here's
as a city
Wendy Luther talking about the plan.
It's not about growth for growth's sake. It's what can we do as a city when we reach 550,000 people? How can we get that right? And when we're standing in 2031 and look back to today, what do we need to do now so that we're incredibly proud when we're in our future state, when we've met our goals? And I think
so the next item was Councillor David Hensby asking the province to reconsider establishing a crosswalk location on the William Porter Connector Road after provincial transportation staff voted against it. This area, they were saying, needs more than just a crosswalk. The speed limit there is 80 kilometers an hour. This is a small nudge for the province to do more. There's a school there, so he wants it to be safer for kids to cross the street to get to school, and that motion passed. So council voted in favor of awarding the tender for the Macintosh Depot replacement project. A tender is sort of the bottom of the, so when the city needs something, it puts out an RFP, which is a request for proposals. It outlines kind of what they need and what they need the service provider, and then a bunch of companies bid. So they say, I can do that work and it'll cost this much, and I'll do this, 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 and this. And then the municipality judges, like basically picks the cheapest, whoever says they can do all the work for the cheapest amount, and then then they get awarded the tender. So that company then will go and do whatever that thing the municipality wants done. That's kind of some jargon. So up next is the first reading of proposed new rules around illegal dumping. The report was kind of interesting. In the report, the staff said that it didn't have any Canadian research around the root causes of illegal dumping, but it did cite one Australian study that just seemed a bit extreme, like they wanted to increase the perceived likelihood of being caught, which runs quite opposite to any sort of harm reductionist thinking. Sort of increase fear around the consequences. So the staff report said the proposed bylaw amendments are anticipated to increase the number of illegal dumping cases which can be successfully resolved or have charges laid. These activities will require additional time over and above the current responsibilities of existing municipal compliance officers and diversion officers. Therefore, hiring new resources would provide the greatest impact. This additional resource will also allow for investigation of illegal dumping on HRM property, including municipal parks. So apparently illegal dumping is such a big problem that we need to hire new cops so that they can investigate the people who are doing this and actually get them in trouble. So I'm going to say yes, but the majority of the answers here said that yes, HRM needs to crack down on illegal dumping, which is honestly surprising to me. Councillor Tony Mancini is the main person behind this motion. He says it's a huge problem. He wants to see the fines even higher. This report also talks about being able to use any identifiable info in the garbage to lay blame for the dumping. So that's like rifling through the stuff that's left and then using that as culpability. If, say, there's a utility bill that has your name on it, the compliance officers can then show up at your house and be like, you dumped this, and you have to prove that you didn't or did. So part of the report talks about HRM already spends a lot of money and does pretty extensive waste removal services. So a month ago or so, we reported that about $38 per person is per year is how much HRM spends to pick up garbage from the end of driveway. This is mostly rural councillors who are talking about this. It's mostly a rural issue. David Hensby added, though, that there needs to be increased awareness about places garbage can be brought versus just enforcement and trying to catch people in the act. He added we should have some facilities available for them that are more convenient. So lots of these depots where you can dump stuff are actually quite far away because HRM is really big. And he wanted more creative solutions than just strictly fines. HRM has done kind of an ad campaign to combat dumping. Like the example here, let's be clear, litter doesn't belong here. That all costs money. Councillor Becky Kent was suggesting an anonymous tip line to empower people to rat on their neighbors who are doing this because of neighbor drama, and they know who's doing it and they don't want to say who's doing it. Just seems silly. And then Councillor Sam Austin came on, and he was actually the first person to talk about the downfall of being overly punitive, and that someone who's dumping their trash is probably having a hard time, which came out of there was a survey about dumping, and it was the majority of people who do this are just having a bad time.
Rather than looking at, and I was a little confused, so one of my questions on this is, that dynamic between HRP versus bylaw, because where I'm kind of coming from on this is I'm increasingly of the mindset that it's not really HRP that we need stationed to be chasing down illegal dumping. For an officer making over $100,000 a year that's trained in deadly force, that's maybe not the best use of resources. Where I kind of think we might need to be with this and things like noise complaints and such is towards 24-hour bylaw. I cut off that, but anyway, I think rather than police, 24-hour bylaw support might be where we need to go in the coming years as a municipality, not just for this, but also in other areas, whether it's parking enforcement, whether it's noise complaints, etc.
So what are your thoughts on illegal dumping? A couple people said this is ridiculous, and a couple people did say that it is a big issue in rural areas. So
I'm okay with shaming people that continue to do this. And if it was up to me, I'd put up a billboard with the name on it. let all their neighbors know what they're doing. So thank you.
And that was just some final thoughts from Councillor Mancini, who's interested in using shame as a motivator to curb behavior. So up next, we had this development proposal for 2438 Gottingen Street behind the Victoria Hall historic property. So what you're looking at is the most recent iteration of the building. The first iteration of the building looked like this. It was 16 stories. It was much taller. So the proposal is from Fathom Studios on behalf of the property owner. Because Victoria Hall is a historic property, so it was built in the 1800s, the whole property needs to be approved by the Heritage Design Committee. And so it was this most recent design. They plan on taking off the back bit of the building, which actually, fun fact, is historic and has a tie to the old Spanish flu. While we're in a pandemic, it has those old radiators with the windows. So the radiators are right in front of the windows because they were designed to be on and keep the apartment warm while the window was open so that the Spanish flu didn't spread as much. But they're going to chop off that back bit of the building there and build this large sort of multifaceted tower that fronts onto Creighton Street as well. So one of the main reasons this was approved by the Heritage Advisory Committee is this, what you can see with the red triangle there, like how much less of the building you can see if you're standing on the other side of the street. So it's also important to note that these processes are kind of long and convoluted. So where we are right now is at the end of the substantial alteration steps. So then the building will actually go back to staff evaluation of the proposal and draft development agreement. It's not near the end of its life of being figured out. So Councillor Lyndall Smith said that he supported the motion on the grounds that it's necessary to keep the conversation going and allow for actual debate on other elements like the impact to Creighton Street and the community. So that motion passed, and that means that the design can no longer be debated on the grounds of historic properties, but it can still be debated on the grounds of planning policy and other things like community. And then next, Councillor Kathy Deagle-Gammon was asking Council to say no to staff's recommendation to abandon looking at the turf project in Fall River. She had brought forward a motion to kind of work with other government partners and get a turf project out in Fall River on the go. HRM said no. We're working on a playing field strategy already, and this kind of goes out and around it. And so she asked councillors to reject that and keep it alive. And there was some debate on whether or not this project had the merit to be kind of bumped ahead in the line for this big turf project strategy that went around and around and around. And essentially, it was just put on the list. And it won't get any special favor unless money comes. So up next was the density bonusing agreement for this new development coming to Halifax's waterfront that looks like a cruise ship. That's pretty much approved, and that design is pretty much what it'll look like. It'll be a little different, but not too much different. So the density or incentive bonusing program lets developers build their buildings bigger than what's allowed if they give the municipality some kind of public benefit in return. So the criteria for this is pretty wide-reaching, and this building actually entered into the development agreement before quite a while ago. So the terms that it had to meet for this public benefit are different than they are right now. So it said that this is a Southwest project, and their public benefit was going to be getting the building LEED Gold certified, which is kind of like an environmental standard. And Southwest that said that would have cost $143,000 to obtain at minimum. Now there are other ways that money could be spent. It could go towards the affordable housing account. They can put in an art gallery. They can put wiring underground. It is pretty wide. Councillor Wayne Mason did say that some environmentalists reached out to him and said that the LEED certification has fallen out of fashion and is kind of actually behind as far as the rules are right now, though, because the development's an older application. It's technically allowed, but Mason wanted to make sure that things were more stringent, and staff actually confirmed that things are that wouldn't fly if someone started a new development application right now. So that passed, and council was voting on the capital budget items that came to the budget committee 2 weeks ago. So we wrote about the 5 most expensive capital items budgeted for 2021. Here's a little explainer of how the budget kind of works. That passed, and up next was the winter maintenance to walking paths in regional parks. Councillor Patty Cuddle wanted Macintosh Run to be considered in the motion. Her amendment passed, so an additional staff report will come forward and it'll look into other potentially missed parks as well. This is the full list of winter maintenance in parks. You can see that Woodside area and Sullivan Ponds get stuff. Point Pleasant gets some winter maintenance, which is actually pretty enjoyable. But this is also a good time if you have a park in your area that you want to get winter maintenance, message your councillor and ask them to get it included in that supplementary staff report. And apart from some notices of motion and in-camera meetings, that was it today. So thanks for following along and for watching this on YouTube. If you have any comments or questions, email me at news@thecoast.ca, and take care.